Hey, I'm throwing a party at my place if you want to come.
Thanks, but parties really aren't my thing.
You think I've been capable of raising a child?
I was going to tell you.
I have a good job. I'm married. Why can't you see that?
I did the best I could for both of you.
Happy Independence Day.
Welcome back. You just saw a trailer for an amazing film, and we have the filmmaker here, Jonathan Carlander, and one of the actors, Buist, is here with us in the studio. I want to start by talking about Jonathan for just a second, because this is his second time being on the show with us. We're really excited to have him here. He is from Long Beach. He's been a longtime lover of cinema, and the last time you were here, you had just debuted a film that you had done as you were graduating from college. Correct me if I'm wrong.
Yeah, at Columbia College Hollywood, I went to film school there, and I was promoting my thesis film called The Pleasing List, about an autistic protagonist.
And we're thrilled to have you. We've been around long enough now that we get to have people come and sometimes they're talking about something and they get to come back and say, yep, that project that I was working on, you got this new passion project. So we're excited that you're here. We should mention, I forgot to ask you before, but you've been on the show before, that you are on the autism spectrum.
You have Asperger's syndrome.
Yes.
Okay.
Absolutely.
And
proud of it.
And proud of it. Okay.
There we go.
Proud of it.
And it seems like most of your films are focusing on that topic.
It's so funny, when I first started making movies, they were mostly rip-offs of very bad horror movies, and mine were just as worse. And I wanted to make a personal film with The Pleasing List for the first time, and so now I'm sort of hooked to doing personal films, and autism is very, obviously very, I think, as personal as I could possibly be.
And this movie is called Autistic America.
Autistic America.
It's a 13-minute short. And it centers, tell us what the film centers, what's the subject matter?
Well, it's about, the movie is called Autistic America, as you said, and it takes place in a small, really neighborhood, and it's about 3 people with autism going about their business on the 4th of July. So you have Tim, played by John Untitled. I hope I'm getting that last name correct, but John plays Tim, who's an artist who's invited by Crash here, his character Mike, to a party, a 4th of July bash. Another character, Paula, she wants to marry her boyfriend Jack and have a child. And our third story is around Ian, who is trying to reconcile with his estranged father at his old family house.
Okay. And Crash, you play the neighbor.
Right, yeah, Mike.
And you're trying to sort of befriend him, aren't you?
Yeah, it's just, it starts off very simple, and I think like a lot of the best stories, it starts simple and then things aren't as simple. And he knows there's somebody across the street who moves in, and he wants to be a good neighbor, and he wants to meet this person, and then learns that, it isn't quite what he was expecting, and still makes a friend. And it's just, it was really interesting reading the script because it was just so touching and so simple. I think it's really interesting you saying that you did complicated rip-offs of horror movies, and then you're like, I'm going to do something simple that touches me, and it was surprising to read it, and I was really excited, and I was glad I was able to help out and do it and do the film. It was great. It was
What a great thing.
He was
so fun.
He was phenomenal.
I'm curious because we haven't seen you in a couple of years, and you were just getting out of college, and you had so much enthusiasm, but being a filmmaker is a really challenging thing to pick, right?
It
I
is.
mean, you have...
But it's fun.
It is fun and very rewarding when you get to do it. In the interim, since we last saw you, how difficult was it for you to get this film made?
It was a challenge. It was, well, first of all, before I decided to make the film, I was trying to break into the industry, and for a couple of years I was a intern, and it wasn't really, the internship was great, but it wasn't really going anywhere. So, so I actually quit the internship, and I came up with the idea of Autistic America, and to make a long story short, I approached a couple of producers. One of them lives in my neck of the woods, named Eric Blackburn. And he has a stepson who has autism, and he said, I'd love to help you produce this. And so for about $7,000, we were able to shoot this movie in literally 2 days at a friend's house. And as fun as the shoot was, I remember coming home every day for those 2 days just feeling like I'd run a marathon or something. I was very physically exhausted. But the weird thing is that it was the good kind of exhaustion. It was like, I feel like I've achieved something.
Yeah.
As opposed to the exhaustion where you feel like, I just wasted X number of hours and I can't get it back.
Right.
So
That gratification of job well done.
that gratification of just working with great people and getting this very personal story on camera. So it was challenging, but it was so worth it.
So $7,000 budget. How long did it take you from when the producer said I want to produce it to get to those 2 days when you shot?
I originally approached Eric, the producer, in April, so in late April, and we shot
Of last year.
Of 2017, and we shot for 2 days in August.
Wow.
And the editing of the film took about the rest of 2017 to do.
So when he said yes, you already had the script in place, or just the idea?
I had the idea, and I had, I think, a very rough draft of it, and he helped me polish the draft and get it to a place where it was shootable and workable. Because originally it was like almost 30-something pages, and it was 4 stories. But because of budget reasons and time reasons, we had to cut the script pages. And one of the stories was very similar to Ian's story, but it was about a young kid named Danny. But it was sort of similar, so I said, well, I'll just cut that out. And I'm glad I cut it out, because I think 3 stories is pretty well suited for a short film. If it was a feature, maybe 4 or 5, but 3, I think, for a short film was the right number.
Oh, go ahead.
Sorry,
I'm on your
Shannon,
turn.
what is your need? What is your goal with the film? What message do you hope to get across?
The same message, I mean, it's worth repeating again and again until society's ears open up. And I tried to do it with the pleasing list too, is that people with autism are human beings. They are not walking labels. They're individual human beings. They aren't all into mathematics or astronomy. They're not all the stereotypical Rain Man, Raymond Babbitt type of person. And I just want people to really grasp that concept of the individuality of autism and how broad the spectrum is. I mean, if you've seen the movie, the characters do have challenges.
Right.
And that is seen in the movie, but they make eye contact and they're fully verbal.
They're all high functioning.
Exactly.
Right.
Now, for Crash, when you came onto this project, did you audition or did you already know Jonathan?
I did audition. Eric was producing the film. Eric Blackburn was producing the film, and we have a mutual friend, Jennifer, who sent me a message saying, like, we need to tape this thing. We're looking for this guy. And it was, for me, one of just a bunch of different auditions that I said, got it, and like read the script and did the thing and woke up and taped it. And then I got to read the script. I got like a very small bit of sides. So I came in way late. I didn't know that. I didn't even know until just now that there were 4 different stories during the development, that it was longer. I mean, Jonathan and I were just talking on the way in here, because we both individually have done different things and had individual careers here. And there's so much that goes on when you're building this thing. Like, that you probably, before you even started writing, right, it was an idea of some kind.
It was just a seed.
Yeah, right. And then that's awesome to hear. But for me, and as an actor, you're lucky enough to come into a project when all of that strife and thought process and reworking and staying up late at night and saying, oh my God, where do those hours go? I'll never get them back, is already done. So I got to just come in, work on the script, meet Jonathan, shoot it.
What did you know about autism before you got involved with the project?
Very little. My father's sister was autistic, and I remember he told me a lot about it at one point when I was growing up. It came up at some point, but she unfortunately passed away long before I was ever around.
Right.
So I heard just sort of like how living with an autistic sister was for him when he lived in where he grew up in New Orleans and then California. But it was always a passing thing, always consider other people's feelings. You don't know really what's going on with other people and their lives. And then that was it for me. It wasn't ever something that I lived with in my immediate vicinity. And it was really exciting to get to work with Jonathan, because I didn't really know what I was getting myself into. It's like, oh, are we? It's a film called Autistic America. The director is autistic, and my immediate thought was, oh no, what am I doing? What am I getting myself into? And it turned out I was getting myself into a professional production with a bunch of really excited, interesting people, and it was great. So
when you auditioned, is that how they worded it to you and said it's a film about autism and the director is on the autism spectrum?
It wasn't that blunt. She told me about the script. I got to read it. She informed me, our friend Jennifer informed me that he knew what he was talking about writing the film. Right?
Okay.
He was coming from a perspective that was not. Because often, especially in Hollywood, you find people that want to talk about something or write about something or direct a film about something that they don't really know anything about.
Yeah.
In order to, I mean, you talked about Rain Man, but I don't know much about the production of that, but using stereotypes to promote their film, or using
Guesswork.
Yeah, right. And so it was really exciting to be told that I would be working on something that was coming from an informed perspective, that was coming from
the authenticity.
Yes, and that's always really exciting.
And was that a decision that you made, Jonathan, early on, that as you were looking for actors, that you were going to step forward and put that, because I imagine it doesn't come up in every conversation that you have, that you start a conversation and say, oh, and by the way, right? Or do you? How do you address that?
I rarely address it, and when I do, people are like, oh, you don't seem like it, which, is kind of a compliment, but at the same time, people do have this going on guesswork about what autistic people are. And as Alex Plank, who I admire, once said, autism, people don't realize autism is people like myself. And so authenticity with this subject matter, whether it's autism or people in wheelchairs or what have you, are so important. It's so important. One of my favorite directors, for example, is Gus Van Sant, who is homosexual, and he comes from a very personal place, like with Milk and this first feature film he did called Bad Night, which I recommend to the folks out there. And he comes from that personal place, and it's so authentic, and you believe it. He's not making fun of it. He's coming from a personal place, and he's sort of taking off his own skin in a way and showing what's underneath. And I tried to do that with Pleasing List, and of course with Autistic America, because it's so important for me to be honest.
So what are your goals as a filmmaker for the future then?
If I can make movies that are entertaining to people as well as give them hope, then I'm good. That's really all I want to do. I'm very, very simple that way.
And you feel that your Asperger's syndrome has been a benefit to you?
An incredible
How
benefit.
is that?
Because I think visually, for starters, I have a very visual kind of imagination. And as a filmmaker, it's in the script and in the story, of course, but the visuals are what tell the story. It's not like a radio program. And so I think visually, and I think autism has a big part of that. And I also think I'm able to verbally communicate sensitive, emotional subjects to my actors. Like if I need an actor to be sympathetic, or I need an actor to, cry, I think I can communicate that very well, having been through those. So I'm very in touch with my feelings, I guess, which I think helps if you're an artist, period, whether you're a filmmaker or a painter or what have you.
And yet so many of the stereotypes that are misconceptions about the autism spectrum, there are people out there that think that people on the autism spectrum have no empathy, do not experience emotions. It is certainly frustrating for me. I can't imagine what it's like being on the spectrum and hearing those kinds of things. It's wonderful to hear you say it's quite the opposite.
It is the opposite, and it does get my blood boiling when people have the misconception or are just willful about, like, well, what's the harm, and the harm is that, it's a justification for discrimination against people who you can benefit from. You don't have to necessarily be their friend, but you have to treat them with respect and dignity.
That's right, dignity. It's the big word. Now, a lot of things have been happening in the film industry. There's this movement now about the inclusion rider. And it's not just about women, it's about everybody and people of ability. I'm wondering, you know, if you guys could speak to the fact, you know, for you, you just have had this experience being on a film with a director who's on the spectrum. Is there anything that you want to say to people about what that was like for you guys and why this inclusion writer should include individuals with autism and individuals with different abilities?
From my perspective, I mean, there's something that you can't, the authenticity that you're talking about is something that you can't manufacture, you can't pretend like it's there. If you don't have inclusion, if you don't have people with different voices telling different stories, I know personally it's not as exciting to tell stories that aren't coming from an authentic perspective. And if, as far as from an artistic perspective, it's exciting to be a part of that, and I think that is something that I really appreciate about enforcing sounds the right word, having an inclusive perspective like that. Yeah, fostering an inclusive environment and an inclusive industry. So that's really exciting.
What do you think, Jonathan?
Some of our biggest, you know, financial successes in the movie business, as well as creatively, came from people who thought differently and perceived the world differently. The biggest example, one of my favorite examples, is Tim Burton. You know, I suspect that he has a lot of, I mean, you read interviews, you hear interviews, you look at his hair. No, I'm just kidding. You hear interviews with him, and you definitely get a sense that he sees the world in a very different way, and he has one of the best visual imaginations I think I've ever seen. And his movies, the studios went in kind of hesitant for the most part, and they become these huge successes, whether it's Alice in Wonderland or more personal projects like Edward Scissorhands. So, yeah.
Where something starts off, when something seems people are apprehensive to go into it, oftentimes that can be the most exciting stuff. You don't know what's going to happen. I didn't know what was going to happen when I came onto the set, and if I hadn't been told that Jonathan, you know, was on the spectrum in some way, I wouldn't have known. But knowing that, being aware of that, letting that inform your artistic decisions, and letting that inform the environment, the workplace, can be weird and scary. And then also it brings to that next level of well, great, then we accept that, and now we let that inform this, and it has another degree of authenticity. It's more exciting. It's more fun. Everything benefits.
And I love the idea of the authenticity of it, but if you had another opportunity to be directed by Jonathan in a film that wasn't necessarily about autism, that was about something else that he felt authentic about, because that isn't your whole life, would you jump on that chance because he's a good director?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, absolutely. I think that was really eye-opening for me as an actor. It was like, oh, this guy's building a cohesive and exciting environment, regardless of the actual subject matter that we're working on. It's like, this is running smoothly. This is really fun. Everybody's having a great time. I 100% would be on board with any kind of project like that. That had nothing to do with, you know, if we were doing one of your horror movies. If you were into that again, suddenly it'd be great.
Well, some horror movies are actually can act as good social commentary.
Absolutely.
Yeah. You know, Night of the Living Dead, for example. Oh
my girlfriend just made me watch The Thing recently, and she was bringing it up, and she's like, "This isn't about a monster. This is about a monster. This is about a social monster."
I loved what Guillermo del Toro said at the Oscars about, if you don't see that there's a way to have this sort of fantastic reality talk about society, then you're missing the boat.
Exactly.
I love that. So we've only got like a minute and a half left, but Jonathan, do you already have the kernel of the idea for the next film?
I would like to do a film at some point about workplace bullying.
Workplace bullying.
Workplace bullying.
Okay.
And it doesn't necessarily have to be about autism.
Right.
But I think that is a very serious epidemic, if you will, for a lot of people. I mean, look at what happened, and I don't mean to really get into this, the sex scandal and that sort of thing. Talk about workplace bullying. And so it needs to be addressed. I mean, I think part of your job as a filmmaker is to present problems to people. Even if you don't have a solution, at least you're saying, this is a serious issue in the world. We need to at least start we have to have serious conversations about this. And an obvious example is Avatar, and the burning of the destruction of cultures and nature and tradition. And so that's one project that I would like to do someday, because I think it's a very tragic issue in our society.
Well, go ahead.
It's nice to see your success as a filmmaker.
Yes.
I'm sure it's inspirational to a lot of people that are watching today. It shows you what those on the spectrum can accomplish. And if you had a message to anybody that's out there listening that happens to be on the autism spectrum that has a dream, what would it be?
Just keep at it. Don't let your label define you. Embrace it. But remember that you are not alone. You are part of a beautiful community of beautiful people.
Absolutely. Now, where can we see the film?
The film is currently being submitted to film festivals, so it's going to be on YouTube for the public to see, hopefully sooner rather than later. But if you just Google Autistic America, within a few, well, you could even Google my name, and I have a YouTube channel. It's just Jonathan Carlander.
That's Carlander.
Exactly. And you could see the trailer for Autistic America, as well as the pleasing list again. And hopefully, sooner rather than later, you'll be able to check out Autistic America as well.
Very good.
I can't wait till the third time you come back. I can't wait to see what the next project is, Jonathan. I love that we're getting to watch you grow as a filmmaker, and so we can say we knew you when.
Well, it's guys like Crash and you that help keep me going.
Well, I also love that this producer recognized and saw the talent in you and said, I'm going to invest. And I think we need to get more people to do that exact kind of thing. So please, Eric Blackburn.
Eric Blackburn.
Give him our thanks. And we saw on the trailer, Blackburn Productions. Good on him that he's associated with such a wonderful, wonderful project. We hope more people do that.
He was wonderful.